Hey friends, so glad you're back with me today. This is the See the Light, Yes You Can Draw Club. This is club meeting number 29. I'm Pat Nepley, your master artist, and I love being with you to teach you about how you can become a better artist. So we're going to be talking about something today that you're probably familiar with, and our final drawing will be something that you are very familiar with, but you're going to learn some new terms today, some art vocabulary that's really important. But before we get started, let's review what you're going to need for today's lesson. You'll need a standard pencil, a really good eraser, 2 pieces of white paper, a Sharpie marker, just a red crayon, and if you have one handy, a ruler. Okay, the last few club meetings that we've been meeting on, we've talked about the various art elements, right? Line, shape, space, color, value, texture. We also learned about some important principles like perspective. Well, we're going to be talking about another art principle today, and that's the principle of balance. Now, you know what balance is, probably from your everyday life. You probably learned to ride a bike, and balance is really important. That's where you're very even and stable because your weight is the same over both sides of the bike. If it wasn't, you would tip right over. Maybe you've tried another sport or another activity like gymnastics or dance or maybe even skateboarding, and you know that balance is really important to be successful in those as well. I think of those people who try surfboarding, where they have to balance not only on a board standing up, but on waves in the ocean. Wow, that's incredible. Requires a lot of balance. Now, why is balance important in art? Well, because balance is really pleasing to the eye. And by balance in art, we mean when you look at a drawing that things are kind of evened out. But it doesn't mean equal, and that's really important for you to remember. Okay, so when I think about balance, there's 2 kinds of balance you can have. The first balance is called formal balance or symmetry. And then the other type of balance is informal balance with no symmetry. Wow, all right, that's a lot of words, I know, but we're going to go over everything step by step. And the best place to start is with something that's really familiar to you, and that's a heart. And this is an example of symmetry. Perhaps you've heard that word in your math lessons. Symmetry simply means that 2 sides of something are a mirror image of each other, exactly the same. So it's important to know where the line of symmetry is. Where would you create an imaginary line where both sides would be the same? So if you look at this heart, and if I were to draw an imaginary line down the center, kind of like I could fold it, you see that the sides are exactly the same. This heart has perfect symmetry, and that creates formal balance. Now, if the line of symmetry were going this way, no, that wouldn't work. See how those 2 sides aren't the same? So it's important as an artist that you know where the line of symmetry is in something that you think has symmetry. Let's look at another example that's going to be familiar to you too. And that would be the butterfly. Now this is a perfectly balanced thing. If I were to have the line of symmetry right down the center of the butterfly's body, you can see that the 2 sides, if I were to fold them up, would be exactly the same. So that's an example of symmetry. Now there's a lot of different kinds of symmetry. There's radial symmetry, and all we're worried about today is line symmetry, where there's a single line that folds something in half. And that's a way to achieve balance. But of course not everything has symmetry. There's such a thing as informal balance. And so what do I mean by that? Well, let's think of all the things that you have in a drawing as having weight. So for example, just like a quarter, which is a large coin, equals 2 dimes and a nickel, which are smaller coins, their value is the same. It's the same idea in art. You balance out objects in your painting. You remember when we talked about composition at an earlier club meeting, the importance of making sure you plan your composition. The same thing applies when we think about balance in our drawing. So if I were to do a drawing
And if I wanted to balance objects, I could make one side have two of the exact same size and shape, or I could have one side be balanced by smaller items on the other side. So for example, the amount of weight something takes up on one side is balanced on the other side.
It's probably easier to understand by looking at some real artwork. So look at this piece of art by the famous artist Claude Monet. It's called Water Lilies 1912. Now this painting has a lot of balance because the artist took the time to make a clump of water lilies in the foreground balanced by two smaller clumps of water lilies in the background. In fact, one is even going off the page. The artist also achieved balance in his use of color. Blue and green are evenly used throughout the painting. And the light splotches that make the water lilies are also evenly spread around the painting. He has achieved informal balance. Okay, so here's another example that's just using black and white lines like we would do in a drawing. And this is by the famous German artist Albrecht Dürer. And this is called 1520 Antwerp. Now you'll notice a lot of white space on this page created by leaving the paper alone. But because of the placement of the sailboats and the buildings with fine pen lines, there's a balance of light and dark. The placement creates kind of a diagonal going across the page that separates the page in half. And so there is informal balance in this drawing. Okay, so what about for us? Take one of your pieces of paper and let's do a real quick exercise in informal balance. Informal balance means we're not worried about symmetry yet. We're going to get back to that. It's how you achieve balance in a drawing based on what you place and where you place objects. So draw along with me if you can. And we're not worried about creating a final drawing. We just want to get the idea. So let's say we're in a room. Let's make a table. And so here we have a table that has 4 legs. I'm just doing a quick sketch. Maybe this is where you do your homework. And on that table, we're going to put a computer. Just put a little keyboard here, a mouse. Maybe a stack of books. You're a busy student. Maybe I have a clock on top so I can keep track of time. And I'm going to put a little cat sleeping under this table. Maybe you have a cat at home that likes to hang out with you when you're doing your homework. Now you'll see that all the objects are on this left side of my drawing. So it's kind of out of balance. This is all empty. So what can you do in this drawing to create some balance? Well, you might think I have to put objects on this side of the table. Well, don't think of it in terms of objects. Think of it in terms of elements in your drawing. So I see that this is all empty on this side. I want to create more balance. So how about I make a window on the wall behind where this desk is? But it kind of seems so isolated, doesn't it? So how about, in order to connect things and create a better composition, I'm going to put curtains. And so it kind of connects my window to my table. And we'll make a window that has the dividers in the window. And I have these long curtains. Still kind of empty up here, but I have at least better balance of my arrangement. So maybe up on this wall, I put a calendar. So there's some kind of picture here, and this has all my days of the week. So you see, you can achieve balance in a drawing without doing anything related to symmetry, just by where you place objects so that it has even weight. So if I were to draw a line down the center of this drawing, I probably have as many elements on this side as I have on this side. So it evens out, and that's informal balance. Okay, so that's one way that you can achieve balance, but of course there's symmetry, right? We looked at the butterfly and we looked at our heart, and symmetry is really attractive to people. Do you know why? Why are humans so attracted to symmetry? Well, that's because God made us symmetrical creatures. Just look in the mirror. We have 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 feet. If you were to take an imaginary line down the center of our bodies, you'd see that we're perfect symmetry. Our sides mirror each other. They're the same. Isn't that cool that God created so many creatures in this earth, so many beautiful flowers and plants, things that have perfect balance, symmetry? I love that verse in Scripture that talks about how God made us, how we're fearfully and wonderfully made. Let me share it with you.
It's in Psalms.
Now, you know, if you've been with me for a while, that Psalms is one of my favorite books in the Bible. And this is Psalm 139:14. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. Yes, we are all individually and wonderfully made by God. And all the amazing creatures we see are all made by God. And we are perfectly symmetrical creatures made by God. That is a pretty cool thing. So for our final drawing project today, we're going to be doing something that's probably pretty familiar to you and uses all the rules of symmetry, and that's a bug. In fact, it's a ladybug. So what I'd like you to do is start off on your piece of paper by making a line down the center with a ruler. That's because it's our line of symmetry. Remember, we talked about how it's important to identify the line of symmetry before you start. That means that's exactly what it's going to be. If you were to fold the sides of your drawing, each side would be a mirror of each other and be exactly the same. And that's how you can achieve balance. So for our ladybug, we're going to start with our line of symmetry. And we're going to start with her shell. Now, she's kind of round, but not exactly round. So you can freehand this. It's kind of between an oval and a circle. But remember, both sides have to be the same. So you can see I'm making some sketchy lines so that I can look at it and make sure I've got 2 sides that are the same. So you do the same thing. And once you get the 2 sides the same that you like, you're going to use your eraser. Remember, we always have our favorite tool, the eraser, handy. And you get rid of the lines that you don't need. Great, so those 2 sides look the same. Now the ladybug, her head is part of the symmetry as well, but it's right at the top. So there's that imaginary line, and it's kind of like a half circle. So whatever you do on the one side, you're going to do exactly the same on the other side. Now, how do you know if you're getting it right? Sometimes it's hard to draw items that require symmetry or even a circle. One of the ways that you can do it, I can't do it here on my easel, but you can do it at home, is to simply turn your paper. Does it still look right when you turn your paper? Sometimes when you're always looking at something straight on in the right way, the up front way that you're going to look at the final drawing, it looks okay, but when you turn it, you realize, aha, that line's not quite right, or it's not curved, or it's not matching. So turn your paper. So then after you get the 2 sides of her head, we need to do her legs. Did you know that all insects have 6 legs? That's how you can tell they're an insect. In fact, that's how you can tell that a spider is not an insect. It has 8 legs, but all bugs have 6. And so our ladybug will have 6, 3 on each side. Now where they attach is hidden under her shell, so we're only going to see a little bit of her legs. But remember, we're talking about symmetry being exactly the same. So let's start right in the middle with a little leg that comes out and bends up. So the same thing on this side, comes out a little and then bends up. Her back leg, you want to get them at about the same level, comes out and bends back. Same here. I want to make sure I'm doing this symmetrically, and bends back. And now the last pair are up closer to her head, and let's have them come out and bend up. I want to make sure I'm symmetrical, so I'm even on the other side. Now, one way to check, friends, is to use your ruler. Did I get them at the right level? Are they right across from each other? Whoops, this one's not. So I want to fix it.
That's because I'm at an easel off to the side and it's a little tricky. So now that we're sure we have her legs and they look symmetrical, now of course the ladybug is known for her spots. So I could do 2 big spots, or I could do several small spots. I think I'll do several small spots. But whatever you decide, they are symmetrical. Symmetrical is a mirror image. So if this spot is closer to the line of symmetry, then this spot is closer to the line of symmetry. So for example, if I were to draw a ladybug shell here, by the same, I don't mean that it's like this, where they're both to the right, both to the left, both to the right. That's not symmetry. Symmetry is a mirror, whereas if I were to fold it there, they would match. So then after I get the spots, I'm left with the antennae. So you're going to start closer to the line of symmetry and curve out. Closer to the line of symmetry, but curve in the opposite direction. And there's your ladybug. So this is an example of formal balance. Formal balance is when there's symmetry, like the butterfly or the heart. Informal balance is like the examples of Albrecht Dürer and Claude Monet, where the objects were placed or how color was used balanced out. So then the last thing we're going to do, just to finish up our symmetry drawing, is take a Sharpie marker and outline your lines that you want to keep in Sharpie. You would fill in her head solid. You would fill in the spots on her back solid. But you don't do the, no, actually with the ladybug you do the line just in her case, but not in her head, since her head will be solid. And you would fill in everything with the Sharpie. And then you'd finish up with the case of her shell in red, and that's why we have the red crayon. Now this is just a really quick drawing, just so you can understand the concept of symmetry. But I bet you could find a lot of other things around that have perfect symmetry that you can draw. In fact, one thing you can do, friends, is go through magazines and see what you can find where if you were to draw an imaginary line, there'd be perfect symmetry. Faces of people looking straight at you is one I can think of right away. But there's also sunflowers that have symmetry, or other items in nature, so look for them. And once you have all of your Sharpie lines, then you can color in the shell. So you can finish that up when you're back at your desk. And I hope you'll join me next time when we talk about some more principles that you can use to become a better artist, because yes, you can draw. I'll see you next time.